When I was a kid, I used to practice piano for hours at a time. Now, maybe I was a weird kid. It was kind of my escape. But I could be playing through a piece, fully playing it, and simultaneously be somewhere else entirely in my mind. And I think that's what I mean by saying it was my escape. Processing something that happened at school, working through a problem I hadn't been able to solve, sometimes just letting thoughts move through me in a way they couldn't when I was just sitting still. The piano wasn't an escape from my thoughts, it was somehow making space for them. I didn't know what to call that then. I just knew that it felt different from anything else. And I've heard versions of this story from students over and over again across 30 years of teaching. Now, I know what the neuroscience says about it, and it's more interesting than I had expected. When you learn a new skill, anything, not just piano, your brain recruits a large network of regions to manage it. Your prefrontal cortex is working hard. Your attention systems are fully engaged. Your motor cortex, your visual processing, your timing systems, all of them are actively supervised by conscious attention. That's what early learning feels like. Effortful, demanding, like there's no bandwidth left for anything else. But as skills become truly automatic, as it moves from effortful to encoded, something shifts. The brain regions that were originally managing it consciously began to hand off. The prefrontal cortex, which handles deliberate attention, steps back, and the skill starts running on its own below the level of conscious supervision. And when that happens, something remarkable becomes available. This is a network in the brain called the default mode network, or the DMN. It's the network that's active when you're not focused on an external task, when your mind wanders, when you daydream, when you reflect on your own experience, process memories, think about other people, make meaning out of what's happened to you. In most activities, the DMN and your task-focused attention networks suppress each other. You're either focused outward or you're drifting inward, rarely both. But when a skill has become sufficiently automatic, there's enough mental bandwidth for both networks to run at the same time. The procedural system handles the playing, and the default mode network, your reflective, meaning-making, emotional processing self, has the space to do its work. That's what I was experiencing as a child at the piano. Two things happening simultaneously, the music running on one track and something deeper running on the other. The default mode network isn't just idle wandering. Research has shown that it's deeply involved in emotional processing, autobiographical memory, and what neuroscientists call self-referential thought, the brain's ongoing project of making sense of who you are and what you've experienced. It's also the network that becomes active during certain types of therapy. During meditation, during that hypnagogic state just before sleep, that moment when thoughts seem to move more freely and things suddenly make sense in new ways. When the DMN is allowed to run without interference, it does something close to what happens during sleep. It processes, connects, and consolidates. It takes emotional experiences that haven't been fully integrated and works on them, not through conscious analysis, but through something more like quiet associative movement. Most modern life works against this. Screens, notifications, constant demands on conscious attention. All of it suppresses the DMN almost continuously. We're rarely in conditions that allow this kind of processing to happen naturally. But a pianist playing an automated piece is in exactly those conditions. The music provides enough structure to anchor the brain and regulate the nervous system. The playing itself is handled by procedural memory without conscious supervision, and the default mode network, freed from competing demands, does something genuinely useful with whatever is waiting to be processed. This is why playing piano feels different from watching television or scrolling a phone. Activities that don't require much deliberate effort, but that keep the brain's attention systems occupied with the external input. The piano creates internal space. The screen fills it. Now, going back to my Aunt Laura, I've told the story of my great Aunt Laura in another video, but it takes on a different dimension here. She was playing at a family gathering, reading an unfamiliar piece of music at the piano, mid-conversation with the people around her, and in the middle of playing, without stopping, without missing a note, she said, "Oh, I didn't expect that." I've always talked about that moment as a demonstration of automaticity, of 6 reading skills so deeply encoded that they ran in parallel without demanding conscious attention. But now I think there's another layer to it. She wasn't just playing and talking at the same time. She was fully present, present in the music, present in the room, aware enough of what she was hearing to be genuinely surprised by it. That's not just a skill. That's what it looks like when the procedural system and the default mode network are both fully available simultaneously. She wasn't working hard to play the piece. The piece was simply happening. And her full awareness, her ability to notice, to respond, to comment was entirely free. That's the destination, and most people don't even know it exists. Here's the part that connects everything, and the part I think is most important for anyone who has ever said that playing piano helps them think, or clears their head, or feels like therapy. This only works when the playing is automatic. A student whose reading is still effortful, whose hands still need conscious supervision, whose rhythm is still being counted deliberately, whose brain is still working hard to identify each note, that student cannot access this state. Their prefrontal cortex is occupied fully. There is no bandwidth for the default mode network to run, which means the therapeutic benefit of playing piano, the thing that makes people say it helps them process, helps them think, feels like coming home to themselves, is not yet available at every level of playing. It's downstream from fluency. You have to build the automaticity first. The emotional and psychological payoff comes later as a natural consequence of the skill being deeply encoded. This is one of the more compelling arguments I know for doing the foundational work correctly, not just because it makes you a better reader or because it lets you play more difficult music. It's all cool stuff, but because on the other side of that work is something that most people who play piano casually never reach, a state where the instrument becomes a genuine tool for something much deeper than music. The students who get there aren't necessarily the most talented. They're the ones who built the foundation carefully enough that the music eventually started running itself. If you've ever had the experience of playing piano and finding that your mind cleared, or that something you'd been carrying felt lighter afterward, you weren't imagining it. You were experiencing exactly what the neuroscience describes, the default mode network doing its work while the procedural system handled the music. And if you've been playing for a while and that experience feels out of reach, if playing still feels effortful, still demands most of your attention, that's information worth paying attention to. It may mean there are foundational skills that haven't fully automated yet, and that is fixable. The link to my reading assessment is below if you want to look at what's still requiring effort in your playing specifically, and I'll see you in the next video.